Welcome to this episode of Spacecraft Guide, the channel that describes how the most historic spacecraft work. This issue of Spacecraft Guide, not only are we going to continue our work on the lunar module, but we're also going to tell you about how you can get the rest of September 2022 for free in the Spacecraft Interactive Virtual Museum. So you'll have to stay till after this part of the spacecraft guide to find out how you can get the rest of September 2022 free. But first, we continue our work on the water control module panel, and our work on the primary evaporation flow valve number 2. And when you click on that valve, you will be taken to the primary evaporation flow valve number 2 webpage. Now, what this valve does is water is routed through a flow limiter to the primary sublimiter. The flow limiter limits the water flow rate during the sublimiter startup period. Now, open, the water is routed through a flow limiter to the primary sublimiter. Close, the water is stopped from being routed through the flow limiter to the primary sublimiter. Well, what does that mean? If we go to the schematics, you'll see here, this is the primary evaporation flow number 2 in valve, so that is connected right here. So the water comes in, as you can see, and is routed up to the primary sublimiter. Now that is also with the primary evaporator flow valve number 1. So the routing for the water comes 2 different ways, and it comes this way and it comes this way. So it has 2 sources to get that water to the primary sublimiter. But again, just to review what that primary sublimiter does is if we go down here to this diagram and we come over here. So we have the primary water sublimiter. So that comes in, the water then is brought into the cold rails. It's cooled down, and once it's cooled down, it is brought around all the way down to the electrical instruments here, and that cold water is used to cool the instruments and also the suit liquid cooling assembly. So it cools down the astronauts too. So I want to show you on a special new thing that we have created for the spacecraft guide, and that is a panel explanation. So not only do you have the component, we are also going to have a panel description. So when you click on that, it actually takes you to the description of what that panel does. Now here we have the water management section panel, and it stores water for metallic consumption, evaporation, cooling, fire extinguishing. So here it's going to tell you about that whole panel. Now this is something new that we've created, and the reason why we've done that is to make it easier and clean things up. Instead of doing each component here separately, we're going to do the panel, and then from the panel we're going to have components on it. Now what I'd like to do is get your feedback on this, and if you save this far, we thank you first of all, and second of all, we're going to have a special for you. If you look at this panel and you see and you go through these, we would like your feedback. If you give us feedback on it, we will give you a month free of looking at the spacecraft guide. So just give us your feedback, and then we will tell you about a special deal for you to get a month free of Spacecraft Guide. That's all for this week. If you would like to use this interactive virtual reality exhibit on the command module, the lunar module, and the surface of the moon, just go to our Patreon page and the link will be down below.